Hey guys, this is Vishal Kapoor, your friend in real estate, and I'm here again with real estate lawyer Shannon, and from
Spadafora and Murphy.
Murphy. I always confuse with this Spadafora part. And we're going to talk about today Residential Tenancy Act, changes in Residential Tenancy Act. So thank you, Shannon, for coming over here, and
I'm happy to be here.
yeah, and really excited to know what's going on. I know there's a lot of changes happened this year, and this is one of it. So tell me about what new changes are coming in Residential Tenancy Act.
So last year, they created a new act, which was called the Rental Fairness Act. I don't know if it's properly named, but what this act did is that it amended the Residential Tenancies Act, which is really the act that governs every residential tenancy.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not allowed to contract out of the Residential Tenancies Act, so it does apply to everyone out there who has a lease,
Wow.
landlords and tenants. So the act came into play in May of 2017, but there's still been a lot of changes, and they're still making regulations and trying to figure out how the new act plays in with the old act and what further changes are going to be required moving forward.
Oh, that's interesting, and thank you for keeping me updated on that. I know, like every year, government sets certain percentage for increasing the rent. What change is happening in that direction?
So you're absolutely correct. Every single year, the government sets the rate at which you can increase your rental amount by, and also that's the same percentage on which you have to pay interest on the purchaser's last month's rent that they have deposited with you.
Right.
But there are certain circumstances where you might want to increase the rent for a greater amount than what the guidelines allow for. And so in order to do this, you have to make an application to the board and explain the reasons why. Sometimes it's because you've done capital improvements to the property. Sometimes there are greater costs. One of the ways that you used to be able to apply for it was an increase in utilities.
Okay.
So if you had a substantially higher amount of utilities, you could go to the board and say, hey, I need to charge more rent because of this. However, with the new changes to the act, they've taken that away, and you're no longer allowed to apply for an above guideline increase based on utilities. So landlords have to be very careful, and my suggestion is that the utilities be in the tenant's name rather than the landlord's name, so you don't get caught paying for extra amounts that you shouldn't be.
Absolutely, and I think that's getting a little bit tougher for landlords. At the same time, they want to increase, more accommodation.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be a little bit tougher. I also heard about, like, in order to regulate, and because there's every lease you have to read it differently. They're trying to standardize the forms.
Mm-hmm.
So what happening in that direction?
So they haven't come out with the standard form lease, but you are absolutely correct. The government is putting out a lease which will apply to all residential tenancies, so that you don't have that difference between certain leases and other leases and provisions that maybe are not compliant
Right.
with the Residential Tenancies Act. One of the big changes that landlords will need to know about here is if your tenant asks you for a standard form lease, after the government's brought it in, of course, and you do not comply, the tenant can withhold their rent from you. Yes, so
Oh, wow.
they're actually allowed to hold on to their rent until you present them with the standard form lease. Then they can choose whether or not they want to sign it. And if you, as a landlord, do not provide it to them within 30 days, then they are allowed to write off that month's rent which they did not pay to you. So it's not like they can just withhold it and pay it later. They get away with not paying for a full month.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
crazy. As long as, like, they're supporting the tenants, but at the same time, it's need to be fair, I believe, in both the party. But well, it is what it is, and We keep on working on that. The one thing I like about that is going to be the standard, so there's not many things about
Yes.
it. But again, like with the regulation, I think it's enforcing. That's a part, and I don't think it was going to last long, but they want to enforce that.
Yeah.
So I'm always hopeful. I also heard there are some changes happening in terms of giving termination notice. So what my clients and landlord need to know about that?
Of course. So one of the ways you used to be able to get a tenant out, so to speak, is that you could tell the tenant that you were going to use the property for your own use and move in there yourself, and that was a valid reason to cancel a lease, provided certain provisions were met within the guidelines and giving them notice and what have you. So you're still allowed to do that. However, the change is that you must occupy the residence for at least 1 year afterwards, and you must pay the tenant 1 month's rent in order to be able to do so. So no matter when you gave notice to them, you would still be required to pay 1 month's rent to that tenant in order for you to occupy it yourself. And I think something that's very important here and why people should be using a realtor, because if you're a purchaser and you're buying a place that has a tenant in there, you need a realtor to make sure that they're telling their side that they have to give notice beforehand, or that you're covered off in your agreement of purchase and sale to make sure that you're not going to be on the hook for that first month's rent after you kick them out.
Right, that's a great point, and thank you for pointing out that, hire a realtor, because we go through those things every day. We know the clauses, like what should you put and how to protect our client's interest. So again, thank you very much. Keep on watching, because more and more things are coming in. The real estate is changing big time, and you get to know these information because I'm connecting with professionals like Shannon over here, and so provide you the up-to-date information. Thank you, Shannon, very much. And if they want to reach out to you, what number they can reach out to?
905-281-4586.
All right, and if you have any real estate questions, which you reach out to me, my phone number is 905-330-8675, and the email is vishal.kapoor@century21.ca. And don't forget to like and subscribe our social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We are all over the place. So thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Bye.